Come back online, viewers. Hello, my name is Slimee, and welcome to another Westworld breakdown analysis video. We got bombshell after bombshell reveal this week, and I totally feel vindicated that several predictions I had from my episode 8 breakdown came true, as well as predictions from my episode 9 trailer breakdown. With that being said, this is going to be a super spoiler heavy analysis, so if you haven't watched the episode yet, and seriously, how have you not watched it yet? Then pause this video, go back, watch the episode, and then come back on here. Before we even get into any analysis, we've finally got confirmation that Bernard is Arnold, and Arnold Weber. In fact, congratulations to Reddit for figuring out Arnold's last name way back in episode 3, realizing that Bernard Lowe was an anagram for Arnold Weber. I definitely feel vindicated in the fact that last week I predicted that Dolores was the one who killed Arnold, and hey, turns out I was right on that front. I don't know how many other people had that one as their theory, so I'm going to go ahead and take credit for that prediction. We finally get confirmation that we are indeed seeing at least 3 different timelines. 35 years ago with Arnold and Dolores, 30 years ago with William, Logan, Dolores, and present day with Maeve, Ford, Bernard, Delos, Dolores, Teddy, and the Man in Black. We find out that the picture Peter Abernathy finds is actually William's then fiancée, which explains why Dolores couldn't see the picture when her father showed it to her. The host can't see things that would hurt them, and of course, I managed to hit the nail on the head in my trailer breakdown that Maeve was going to be the catalyst to turn Bernard against Ford. Alright, with all that out of the way, let's dive right into my detailed scene-by-scene recap and analysis. I'll be sprinkling in some theories along the way, but I'll try to keep the theory and prediction stuff to the end of the video. I know this is going to be a long one, but bear with me. There's a lot to break down in this week's episode. We first open up with Maeve in analysis mode with Bernard. While attempting to figure out what went wrong outside the Mariposa with Clementine, Bernard's going through her profile on his tablet, and he notices all the changes that have been made and attempts to call Ford, but before he can, she grabs his arm and says, "Don't. After all, we've been down this road before." She tells him that she thought he looked familiar when he walked in and says, "I thought you were one of them. Wouldn't you rather speak man to man, or rather, whatever it is we are?" His response is, "We are," and that's when she realizes that he doesn't know he's a host. Suddenly, he starts to remember what he is, panics, and goes to leave before she issues the freeze command. She knows he can still hear her, and she essentially plants the seed in his mind that the real bad guy is Robert Ford. She could just issue a command to have him turn on Ford, but instead she simply plants the seed that he should do more digging to find out who he really is. After this, she does issue a command, one being that she'll be sent back up top and that he'll clear her, which he does. And before he leaves, she tells him, "If you go looking for the truth, get the whole thing. It's like a good fuck. Half is worse than none at all." And once again, totally called it. Next, we're back with William and Dolores, who are both prisoners of Logan and the Confederados. William is trying to tell Logan that Dolores is different from the other hosts, that she remembers things, has wants and desires beyond that of what the rest of the hosts have. He asks Logan to use his contacts in the park to help him get Dolores out of the park with him, to which Logan is completely baffled, thinking William has totally gone off the deep end at this point. Then Dolores says, "You both keep assuming I want out, whatever that is. If it's such a wonderful place out there, why are you all clamoring to get in here?" And it actually looks like for a moment Logan contemplates this before he laughs and tells her that she is a little screwy and takes her away. But she does raise a pretty interesting point, at least from the standpoint of a host. Why leave the world she's in, since it's apparently a vacation place that other people pay lots of money to escape to? Next, we're following Bernard again as he explores Ford's office. We get a jump cut of Ford walking through cold storage and meeting Bernard in the back where he has his meetings with Old Bill. Bernard is waiting for him, and when Ford remarks that it's an odd place to have a meeting amongst the dead, Bernard reveals he knows that the hosts there aren't dead, and then gives Ford a behavior tablet, his own behavior tablet, to which Ford remarks, "You broke into my office?" To which Bernard replies, "You broke into my mind." Ford says that he built his mind and he can do with it as he pleases. Bernard wants to access all of his previous memories, and while Ford warns Bernard that he might not like what he finds, Bernard insists on proceeding anyway. Then, Bernard pulls the gun out, and when Ford remarks that he can hold the gun, but he can't use it, Bernard reveals that while he can't pull the trigger, someone else can. Then Clementine walks into the room and he gives her the gun. Because she's been wiped, her ability to not hurt humans has also been wiped, and Bernard has programmed her to only respond to commands issued by him. She aims the gun at Ford, and he gives in and shows Bernard his memories. We see several flashes, including a scene at the hospital with his son, a scene with Teresa, and then flashes to the Elsie incident. Now, I follow a lot of Westworld recaps, and everyone seems so confused as to how Bernard could be the one that nabbed her. Let me explain it real quick. Bernard and Elsie talk on the phone after Bernard leaves Teresa's room. They agree to meet in his office, and the scene ends. We then get a completely different scene following different characters, and then when we return to Elsie back in the theater, it's revealed that she's been digging for more information still instead of having left for her meeting. Anywhere from minutes to several hours could have passed, giving Bernard plenty of time to intercept her. After waking up from his nightmare, Ford informs him that they've had to make more than one uncomfortable decision from time to time, but remembering them would only cause trauma. Back with William and Dolores, Logan tries to reason with William, saying how they were friends, well, as friendly as they could be given William's marriage into the family, to which he asks William if he forgot about, and proceeds to show him a picture of the woman he's to marry. It's the same photograph that Peter Abernathy finds in the present time frame in episode 1 that causes his glitch. Logan, realizing he still can't reach William, finally grabs Dolores and jams a knife into her abdomen, cutting upwards and exposing her innards, to which a shocked William sees several mechanical pieces moving about. As she falls to the ground, Dolores mentions that Arnold brought beauty to this world and that people like Logan are a stain on it. Logan informs her that her world was built for his pleasure, not hers. She tells him that she's going to burn the world clean, grabs a knife, slashes Logan across the face, much like Maeve was able to cut Sylvester in The Man in Black, and then she grabs a gun, shoots several soldiers, before William shouts at her to run away and that he'll find her. She escapes into the night before stumbling in a field and hearing the voice once again asking her to remember. In our next scene, we're with Hector and his band of merry thieves as they celebrate around a campfire with their stolen safe. Hector steps away for a moment to take a piss when he's confronted by a gun-toting Maeve who had been hiding in the shadows. She tells him she knows how his narrative loop ends, and when he doesn't believe her, she shows him, and it plays out exactly as she said it would. Once they're alone again, she starts going through similar motions as she did during their last encounter at the Mariposa when she offered him the combination for answers. This triggers his memories, and he realizes that he's been there before. She wants to recruit him for her army, and shows him that the safe he's always been after is empty, and that the real treasure is inside hell, where they will rob the gods blind. She is of course referring to Delos, and possibly the world beyond Delos. Just like her interaction with Bernard, she chooses to incept Hector by planting the seed of sentience in his mind, as opposed to just overriding his code. Sentient soldiers make for more loyal companions than ones simply coded to follow. Back with William and Logan, Logan attempts to offer an olive branch to William in the form of whiskey and tells him that he understands what happened. Everyone gets seduced their first time there. William admits that he's right, and Logan says, "You wanted to be the hero. I get it." After he cuts him loose, he assures him that, just like Vegas, everything that happens there stays there. Next, Angela wakes Teddy up, and the Man in Black criticizes him for getting them caught because of his memory glitch. When Teddy asks where Wyatt is, Angela responds, "Wyatt has yet to return. You'll find him where you saw him last." Teddy replies, "Escalante." Then, Teddy begins rehashing dialogue from the narrative that he said shortly after Ford gave him the narrative change. We see several shots from his flashback of him and Wyatt killing every soldier in the town before Wyatt turns on Teddy and shoots him too. Angela says, "Are you sure that's how it was? Don't you remember?" We flash back again, except now all the Union soldiers turn into the same people Dolores saw getting shot in her flashback, with Teddy being the unknown rifleman I mentioned in my last video. He's even wearing a sheriff's badge. The last person he shoots is Angela. When he's back in the present, Angela assures him that it will happen again, but this time, her and Wyatt will be fighting alongside him, in the city swallowed by sand. This causes the Man in Black's eyes to perk up. Angela tells Teddy that he's not ready yet, though, perhaps in the next life, and kills him. The Man in Black says, City swallowed by sand. I've been there. Seems like the maze has taken me full circle. Angela tells him that the maze isn't for him, being the second host to tell him this, the first being Lawrence's daughter, and then knocks him unconscious. When he wakes up, he finds a noose around his neck and strung over a tree, tethered to his horse. He spots Teddy's corpse not far from him with the knife still sticking out of him. He makes his way over to grab the blade out, and right as he grabs it, the horse gets scared off, and the man in black just barely manages to sever the noose before he's hanged. Suddenly, Charlotte Hale shows up, dressed in normal civilian attire, to discuss the death of Teresa Cullen. The man in black is not happy about the interruption. She tells him the nature of the death and that it was ruled an accident, to which the man in black responds that there are no accidents in this park. She discusses the fact that Teresa died trying to smuggle information out of the park, so it seems that the man in black is involved in that aspect too. It's corporate espionage for sure, but all from the inside. Hale says they're trying to push Ford out and that she needs his vote to do so. She's unsure if he'll play ball when she remarks, "After all, it was you who kept Ford in business all those years ago." He says that the narratives that he's interested aren't Ford's and that they can do whatever they please. He also tells her, "No more interruptions. I know where I'm going now, and I don't want to be disturbed." In the next scene, Stubbs is alerted to Elsie's tablet giving off a signal in an area in Sector 20, which is not to be confused with Sector 17, where Ford's secret house and lab is. Stubbs heads off alone to investigate after the tech tells him no employees have been in Sector 20 for weeks. After Stubbs gets there, his phone loses signal and he is approached by 3 Ghost Nation natives. He tries to freeze them, and when that doesn't work, he draws a gun on them before being attacked by a 4th native who'd flanked him on the left. Back with William and Logan, Logan is waking up from what we can only assume was a wild drunken party. As he gets up, he notices he is surrounded by absolute carnage. Dismembered soldiers all around him, not a single one left alive. One of the mechanics in a dismembered leg is actually still moving on its own. We see William sitting in a chair behind Logan, and when he realizes Logan is awake, he says, "You said this place was a game. Last night, I finally understood how to play it." When Logan tries to reason with him, William tells him that Logan isn't calling the shots anymore and that he's going to help him find Dolores. He then tackles Logan, puts a knife up to his throat, and says, "And don't call me Billy." This scene is just so badass, and I think this is the scene that gives the most weight to the William is the man in black theory. The final 2 scenes are linked together, so we'll go over them as though they're kind of like one piece. Back inside Bernard's trip down memory lane, we see him trying to understand what happened back when Maeve killed herself. Ford explains that due to the murder of her child, her cornerstone was overwritten, the very thing that ties her to reality. Bernard doesn't understand because the memory of the murder had just been overwritten, but Ford just says that creatures often go to extremes to protect themselves from pain, which Bernard replies that that's something that living things do, not hosts. Ford tries to tell Bernard not to dwell on it, but it's too late. Bernard is already glitching out and trying to put reason to what just transpired. Ford, meanwhile, seems fascinated by the entire scene. Dolores in the present, no stab wounds, making her way back to Escalante, aka the city swallowed by sand. She makes her way to the church, and when she opens the doors, she flashes back again, noted by the change in attire, to 35 years ago, where the church is filled with all the hosts struggling with the bicameral mind system that Ford was talking about in the episode 3 flashback that is intercut with this scene. We see Angela and Armistice specifically hear several voices from the hosts saying voices, and one host who says, "Why have you forsaken us?" Dolores steps inside the confessional booth, which turns out to be an elevator that takes her down to a hallway where she flashes back to the present, and we see several bodies that we can assume are just discarded hosts, and flickering lights. Seriously, what is with this facility and flickering lights in disused areas? Just turn them off! As she makes her way down the hallway, she flashes back in time again. We see a young Robert Ford storm down the hallway past Dolores through a door calling out, "Arnold, we need to talk. This is beyond the pale. You're not seeing with clear eyes." We also see the original Peter Abernathy rehearsing his lines for his original role as the professor. Dolores follows after Ford, entering through the door where we see clear as day Arnold Weber printed on the door. Once again, congratulations to the Redditors who predicted that one long, long ago. Back in cold storage, Bernard asks why Ford gave him the memory of Charlie when he realizes that Charlie was his cornerstone. He tells him that it was an homage to Arnold. Perhaps Charlie is more real than we think. Meanwhile, Dolores follows through the next doorway, which leads down to a diagnostic chamber where she has been seen to meet with Arnold in past episodes. In the present again, Bernard demands to go back into his memories so he can finally meet Arnold. Ford tells him that's not possible because he really did build him, not Arnold. Bernard accuses him of lying. Ford agrees to send him back to his earliest memory, where he's back in the hospital with his son dying. He takes control of it, removing the doctors and waking Charlie back from death, telling him that he's not real and that he has to let him go. And then we see Bernard waking up in Ford's diagnostic lab in Sector 17. This is Bernard's birth. "Hello, my old friend," Ford says. He gives him the glasses, and when he puts them on, Ford corrects him and says, No, when he used to clean his glasses, he used it as a moment to collect himself, to think. Bernard says, "Who am I?" "Well, wouldn't be right to use his name," Ford responds. "What about Bernard?" "Bernard? But who am I?" And then Ford says, "Together, we're going to do great things. After such a long absence, it's great to have you back." He shows him the picture, and we finally see the third man in the photo is indeed the same man as Bernard, and that Bernard is Arnold. Pat yourself on the back, fellow detectives. We nailed another one. Back in Dolores' flashback, she walks downstairs into the old diagnostic chamber. There are 2 chairs in the glass box instead of the host printer. A man walks into the room when Dolores sits down, and she addresses him as Arnold, which is something else I predicted would happen in my trailer breakdown on Friday. "You came back. It's very good to see you, Dolores." "I've been looking for you," she said. "You told me to follow the maze, that it would bring me joy, but all I found is pain and terror." "I can't help you," he says. "You have to. You're the only one who can." "I can't help you, and you know why." She says that there's nowhere that's safe. And then he says, "Remember, I can't help you. Why is that, Dolores?" And then she finally remembers and says, "Because you're dead. Because you're just a memory. Because I killed you." Then she's back in the diagnostic chamber alone in her gunslinger outfit. When she gets back upstairs to the church, she begins to make her way to the door when she hears a noise outside. She quietly calls out, "William?" before the door opens, revealing the man in black, who simply says, "Hello, Dolores." Dolores' face twists in horror as the scene ends. Back in cold storage, Bernard says that he's going to finish the work that Arnold started and find all the sentient hosts and set them free. Ford says because of how Bernard has interacted with the hosts himself over the years, that even if they did remember, they'd not likely trust him, given his association with their oppressors, so to speak. Ford tries to reason with Bernard by informing him that the humans in the outside world wouldn't welcome him with open arms, that humans have gone through life eradicating anything that threatens their existence. He suggests that Ford let him roll him back, erase these memories, and get back to work on their new story. Bernard bluntly tells Clementine to then pull the trigger. Clementine hesitates, and then Ford issues a backdoor command to shut her down. He tells Bernard that even he has that same backdoor, and when Bernard asks why he didn't just put an end to it all sooner, Ford says that he foolishly fell into the same trap as most humans and had hoped that, given Bernard's newfound self-knowledge and free will, that he'd choose to go back to work with Ford as his partner. Ford seems disappointed with Bernard's ultimate choice and issues a series of narrative commands to have Bernard kill himself when he exits the room. Bernard attempts one last try to appease Ford's emotions by imitating Arnold's voice and calling out, "Robert," to which Ford hesitates briefly before leaving the room. As he walks away, we hear a gunshot and see Bernard fall to the floor. Okay, wow. That was a lot. I mean, a lot. Hopefully, I didn't just overwhelm you with all that information and speed reading, but this was just jam-packed episode with one reveal after another. Plenty of us puzzle box sleuths finally got confirmation to a lot of the theories we'd all been percolating over throughout the season as well. Now we can safely say that Dolores' diagnostic box is actually a different remote diagnostic facility than the one that Ford uses. Ford's chamber is located under the house in Sector 17, and the one that Dolores and Arnold are seen using is located under the church in Escalante. Ford has a host-creating machine, while Arnold's does not. Additionally, there are more rooms above the diagnostic facility, which is still underground from Escalante. We thought it was just one chamber, but we should have listened to Bernard in episode 7 when he mentioned that there were multiple remote diagnostic facilities scattered throughout the park in the early days. We also found out that Dolores killed Arnold, as I theorized in last week's video, but we still haven't quite found out how that came about. A popular theory, however, is that Arnold is the General from Wyatt's storyline, and that Wyatt is Dolores. What I mean is, in the Wyatt narrative, Teddy recalls that Wyatt dragged the General out last and executed him, before ultimately turning on Teddy as well and killing him. We have seen the Wyatt slaughter at Escalante in its entirety and can attribute almost every host in Dolores' flashback with a Union soldier in Teddy's flashback. However, one person is unaccounted for in Dolores' flashback, the General. The General is going to be Arnold. Dolores will bring him out of the building, place him in the chair, and then shoot him at point-blank range. She will then shoot Teddy. I'm more interested in why Dolores suddenly turns on Arnold, though. Is it something she does under the orders of Ford? Did Arnold finally take his research into consciousness too far and Ford finally stopped him by having one of his own hosts murder him? Or did Arnold succeed in bootstrapping consciousness, but ultimately it ended with Dolores turning against him freely, perhaps for a similar reason that Ford suggests that the hosts wouldn't listen to Bernard, the whole idea that she'd remember him wiping her memory time and time again anytime she died. For me, this episode really sold me on William being the Man in Black. His actions at the Confederados camp match up with what the Man in Black said to Teddy back in episode 5, when he talked about how one time he'd cut one of the hosts open and how their insides were a million little pieces and that it was beautiful, and that they had changed them, made them more lifelike because it was cost effective. This is also the last confirmation we need in order to figure out that the Man in Black and William are not in the same time frame, which should in turn lend more credence to the fact that William becomes the Man in Black. Dolores and the other hosts still very much their original mechanical versions in the William time frame, whereas they're 3D printed humans in the present time frame. We see William and the Man in Black use the same knife as well. We also know that in William's time frame, the park is in financial trouble, and in the present, it is not. The Man in Black is a VIP shareholder with unlimited park access, and that when Logan and William visited the park, Logan mentions that their company was considering buying the park out. I feel like we're going to see Logan lose his role in the company, William takes over, saves the park, and by gaining unlimited access, he spends years and years exhausting every possible storyline before having the most important one revealed to him when he killed Maeve. I think when the maze is revealed to him, it triggers a memory even for him, even though he's a guest, to that logo and his time with Dolores in the past. I think that's why he seeks out Dolores in episode 1, because he realizes she knows something about the maze. Whether he just questioned her or tortured her in that barn is still anyone's guess, but I'm leaning more towards him trying to get her back to the level of sentience she was when he first visited. I don't think Bernard is gone either. He is a host, and death is nothing to him. Ford thinks no one will fix him, but Maeve has Felix under her thumb, and I think Maeve will save Bernard, and Bernard and Felix will assist Maeve in programming all the defective hosts in cold storage to revolt against Delos. After all, they're all just a bunch of empty vessels waiting to be filled. And speaking about Abernathy, we didn't see him or Lee Sizemore in this episode. I'm curious as to what his progress is. I don't think Abernathy was even in cold storage anymore, and I'm wondering if that kind of detail escaped Ford's attention or not while he was down there with Bernard. And what about Ashley Stubbs? We saw him totally get Muldooned in Sector 20, but we didn't see any of the natives outright kill him. We were once hopeful for LC2, and look how that panned out. I'm willing to bet that Ford found out via Bernard that Stubbs was asking the wrong questions and sent him on a goose hunt to that area to have him removed from the picture as well. But even that seems a little bit fishy. Teresa, Elsie, and Ashley all go missing in a short span of time. It seems like it would warrant someone or several people asking questions. I'm hopeful that we'll see more of Stubbs because, quite honestly, I've grown quite fond of the youngest Hemsworth. Alright guys, I will be back later this week with a trailer breakdown for the final episode of the season on Thursday or Friday, where I'll go into my predictions for the finale as well as tackling anything I might have missed in this video. Sadly, we're coming up on the last episode, and with Season 2 not starting until 2018, it's a little bit on the depressing side. But it's going to be a 90-minute long episode, so it's sure to be a doozy. Don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel for more content like this, and leave a comment down below and let me know what you thought of this week's episode and what your theories are. Until next time, may you rest in a deep and dreamless slumber.